Hey, everybody, and welcome. Everybody, welcome to our discussion here: why culture matters when choosing your cybersecurity partner. My name is Jake Milstein, and if you haven't been to our events before, well, I'm the event host. And one of the things we do off the top here is spend some time, while people come into the room, because you hit the top of the hour and people are then clicking on the link. And some of you I saw were early, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, but others take a little bit. Um, Over on the right is the chat. We'd love to know where you're joining from. I happen to be visiting Oregon State University, so that's why you see a tsunami evacuation route behind me today. But the Wi-Fi is great when you're visiting universities. That's where I am. And I see Nathan is joining from Kansas. Nathan, good to see you. All right. So as we get going here, so things to know. So the chat's on the right. Let us know where you're joining from. Um, at the top of the chat, you can see a little bell with a line through it. That means it's muted. If the bell isn't through it, then it's unmuted. And if you want to mute it, guess what you do? You hit the bell. Um, the Also important to know that you will get a recording of this. We always get the question, hey, am I going to get a recording of this? So I have two answers to that. One is the system will send you a recording. But it is a system, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And you're the only one who can view the recording, and that's just how it works. We also put all of our webinars on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you find the Critical Insight channel, we'll have it up there by tomorrow, so you can always view it there. And we'll send out the link to the folks who attend, that YouTube link as well. So it's always good to see. Always good to see folks. Wow, we have people from Minnesota and from
Iowa?
Kansas and Iowa. That's awesome.
Cool.
So anyway, yes, you all will get a recording of this. Now, who are we? So if you don't know us, Critical Insight defends critical infrastructure by providing cybersecurity as a service. Most of our customers don't have massive IT teams, and so we help them prepare for an attack through risk assessments, through pen tests, through incident response planning, and tabletop exercises. We help them detect an attack quickly. And what does that mean? That means we have 2 security operations centers. And well, you're going to hear a lot about that from Lola today. But we have security operations centers that watch networks 24/7 and help you get the bad guys out quickly by responding decisively, doing rapid quarantine actions. And hey, you can call our 800 number in the middle of the night, but that is not how we want to meet anybody. But that's what we do. We defend critical infrastructure by helping organizations prepare, detect, and respond to cyber attacks. Today, so if you've been to any of our webinars before, you know Mike Hamilton really well. Um, as somebody just said at a conference, why does he always seem angry? He's not angry. He's just passionate. He's the former CISO of the city of Seattle, and he's one of the company founders here at Critical Insight, and he's, of course, our CISO. One person you likely have never met before is Lola Morse, who is our SOC manager at Critical Insight. And also we have Brian Vinchinsky, who is one of our senior security strategists. And you know what? They're here to really talk about why culture matters, because they're part of the culture and they've seen what goes well in culture and what doesn't. Lola, can you give folks a little sense of your background?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for calling on me. And thank you, everyone, for coming in today. We appreciate you taking the time. My name is Lola Morse. And as Jake said, I'm the SOC manager here at Critical Insight. I have been here since about 2019. I'm currently in my 5th role, which have resulted either through promotions or opportunities to work in new departments. And I will say that for me, I really discovered my devotion for cybersecurity after obtaining my undergrad from UW, when I learned what it really was at a coding boot camp. And I remember the boot camp teachers would have us add all this software, not teach us what it was, how to maintain it, how to secure it, and it never got talked about again. And since then, I have been really dedicated to sharing security, especially in our newer, growing technical world, whenever I can.
Ooh, I love hearing stories of security gone wrong. Brian, can you give folks a little bit of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Vinchinsky. I am the senior security strategist here with Critical Insight. A little bit about me. I'm a former Army veteran who decided to go to school later on in life, which is where I met Mike Hamilton giving a speech at my college, and was encouraged to join the internship program with Critical Insight. And since then, I've been working here just shy of 5 years. And one of the major things that keeps me around at Critical Insight is the culture. And so, as we go through this presentation and talk about it, I'm happy to share some stories and some insights with you about my journey here. One of the major things for me that really stands out is the ability to transition from that military to civilian life. I can attribute to Critical Insights culture playing a vital role in that, and I'm very thankful for that.
And
So
awesome. Thanks, Brian. And my background, for those of you who haven't met me before, is I've worked in newsrooms. So I've only worked in really strange cultures, and I'm happy to tell anyone stories about over a beer, but that's for a different day. Um, why does company culture matter? Your vendor, oh, look, there's a typo. Your vendor choices will reflect on you. And we all know this is true. We like to pretend that, vendors, and this is true for me too. I run marketing at Critical Insight. My vendor choices reflect on me. If we don't hire a good vendor, well, that's a problem. And it reflects on me. And you all know in your roles, you can bring in all sorts of vendors. And in the end, you're the one who has to answer for it. So it matters a lot. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the news?
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on. So I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone that it's a seller's market. People have incredible fluidity in this business. And, I'm sure we all know people who change jobs every 6 months and, keep doubling their salary because right now that's what the market will bear. And as we are trying desperately to get these resources into some of the more critical organizations that keep us alive, maintain our quality of life, things like local governments, hospitals, things like that, they're incredibly hard to hang on to. Part of the problem is criminal organizations are actually actively recruiting as well, and they pay well. And plus, it's all remote work. But I think more broadly, it's this bit about everybody's kind of rethought what it means to be an employee and what your relationship with your employer is like and what you will accept in terms of the amount of time you spend on the road commuting. As somebody who lived in LA for 18 years before I ran out screaming, I can tell you that's a thing. People just don't like to be commuting all the time. So again, these resources are in short supply. They're very mobile. They can set their own terms. And so we are contending now with a great shortage of the people that we really need. Yes, technology can help focus someone's investigation, but technology is not going to investigate. And we need as many eyes on our problem as we can get. So this is kind of what's going on in the news. Again, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. And Jake, are you running the slides for me?
Sure am.
I'm perfectly capable of doing it myself, just so you know. And then, so everybody's trying to get these resources, but for the most part, people are doing it wrong. I think everyone's coming around to the fact that when you're looking for an entry-level employee in cybersecurity, you can't demand 5 years of experience, 3 certifications, and a degree. It's just it's not credible. And so this narrative that's out there right now about these kind of joke job announcements is pretty loud. And so here's warning signs that people share when they run across one of these job announcements that is just nonsensical, right? They don't know what they need from this position. They are absolutely going to overwork me, and burnout is a huge problem, right? I mean, the resources we're looking for are tapping out in a lot of cases. Or this is somebody who's just I'm either a checkbox or a scapegoat. And so this whole bit about we need these people really badly. HR, find us some people, and HR will go grab the first similar job announcement they can find on the internet, doctor it up. This is not working. It's not working. Go to the next slide, Jake.
Well, and before you do, it's, I was just talking to an IT director for a city, and they were saying that they had applied for a job at I think it was a bank, either bank or a credit union. And what they got in their first interview is they were looking exactly for a scapegoat. That's what they were looking for. Because,
Yep.
hey, if something goes wrong,
Off with your
it's your
head.
head. It's, yeah, it's you. It's
Yeah,
huge.
and I would also add really quick before we move on that it kind of also shows the disconnect between hiring and what type of degrees our candidates are getting. You can get a degree from a university or a four-year college that is really theory based and you don't have as much hands-on experience or get those certifications with your degree. And so it's all these additional asks that you're putting out there for this entry level role. And so it does really just show that disconnect. And I wanted to put some highlight there as well.
Yeah,
Good.
for sure.
Right. So again, burnout's part of the problem too. And problematically, especially when we're talking about analysts, right? People that investigate strange things going on in networks, trying to figure out, is this really bad enough for us to call it an incident? And what are we going to do to escalate? We have to address that. That role, analyst role, you are guaranteed to be in a position where you're always losing, right? You're this close to disaster all the time, and that is very stressful. So you have to address that as well. Your cybersecurity employees um, need to start with analysts. You can have architects and engineers and executive leadership and all that stuff. Analysts are the base rate. You got to have analysts. You can't burn them out. Somehow you have to retain them. So how do we do that, Jake?
And Lola, I think you wanted to chime in here
Yeah.
because you have all of our SOC analysts, working for you. Burnout's a real thing.
Mm.
Absolutely. There are two main things that come to mind for me when thinking about burnout. One is that this is an area that I would say most organizations have not always performed where they want to be, including us. We have really focused on improving and continuing to prioritize breaking down some of the rigid silos of the SOC, which, is a requirement because of the nature of the work that we use. It's solitary, it's very secure. And so, from talking to our analysts, one of the improvements that we've made that they've really appreciated is learning about the business side of the organization and the current decisions and discussions that occur that affect their ongoing work and the mission that we're all trying to achieve. The other thing that I think of is really just supporting your team and having them also influence up to you. We provide individual support to each other, and we're aware of when we take breaks. I hear my analysts on shift talking not only to their peer analyst level, but even leadership and myself. And we'll be like, hey, you haven't taken a break yet. When are you going to take your lunch? And we really encourage us ourselves to really be able to go get that break that we need to stay efficient, reduce and prevent stress levels, and not get burnt out from alert fatigue and then start making errors and mistakes. So my team, like I said, also hassles me to make sure that I do that. And I love that they keep me accountable to the values I preach.
And
So
Brian, you were both in our SOC. And so one of the things to know about Brian is he interfaces with a lot of our customers and a lot of our prospects. When I say prospects, what I mean is any company who ever comes over the transom and talks to us, Brian talks to a lot of them. So Brian, you've seen, what it's like in some other places where people come to us stressed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jake, I did want to second what Lola was mentioning about that curiosity to learn the other parts of the organization and how we operate, which goes directly into kind of my career path here with Critical Insight, going from the SOC, to our operations engineering department, to our sales engineering, and now the strategy, right? And so, that abiding curiosity is also supported by our internal processes to provide career paths to our employees, which I think is awesome as well. And these are also the same types of issues that we're running into with some of the prospects that I talk to around, how many hats can a single person wear, right? I mean, there's only so many before they start to topple off. And so these are very real concerns out there for, people just like you tuning in.
All right, Mike, next slide.
Okay, so here is a document that was produced by NATO. And NATO, as you know, is kind of right in the middle of a whole lot of geopolitical tension right now. And this this came out in 2020. It's called the Tallinn Report. And this was done in Finland with a lot of countries putting their input into here. But you can see there how to keep your cyber workforce recruited, retained, and frankly happy. And so we've tried to address all of these: education and exercise. Now, number two, there, serving the nation. The mission focus has a whole lot to do with this. And as we go through our presentation here about how we source and how we develop and how we retain and things like that, that mission focus is kind of the cornerstone of all this. It's really important that people are doing something important. I mean, yeah, you can go off, just make money somewhere. We can do that anywhere. But it turns out to be, especially in this business, it is very important for that mission focus to be there and feeling like you are actually fighting the good fight, because it's a fight. Right? Job security, stability of income. Obviously, they got to be paid. Like I said, this is a seller's market, and people are just offering lots of money. That's why it's very hard to compete. When we're talking about local government, healthcare, small and medium business, right? They just cannot attract and retain. So we got to fix that. So you can go down the list there yourself, and let's talk about how we have tried to address all of these.
Yeah, I would like to hop in and talk on that first bullet about education and exercises. One of the things you see a lot is, of course, we always want our team to expand their technical skills. The threat vector is always increasing. There's vulnerabilities in, supply chain attacks that we hear about almost on a daily basis. But the other thing to really consider for a SOC in particular in the analyst level is that this is an entry level role. So not only do we need to assist them in their technical skills, but as a organization, you also have to be there to help them with the skills they need for their next role, which is really knowing how to utilize whatever type of email that you use. So if it's Outlook, how do I get other calendars? How do I make a pivot table? And some things that kind of fall outside of the traditional things that you would think of the training and education you want for your team. So that way you're encouraging your staff to not only help your company grow, but they are also growing with you to then go to the next place that they are trying to achieve.
Okay, so back to this mission thing. So all those things we talked about, the inability to attract, retain, not doing the right things to help people along in their careers after they get into an entry-level position, we're not doing it wrong. And so we're going to share that with you right now. So number one, our mission is incredibly important. That is what resonates with everybody in the company. We started this, I was working in government. I was the CISO for the city of Seattle and a policy advisor for the state, and worked on a Homeland Security Government Coordinating Council. And that is what led to the creation of this company. It's because we want to work for the things that are important, right? The letter from the credit card company that's saying you're going to get free credit monitoring for your 29th time, that is not important. If your kid turns blue and you call 911 and it doesn't work, that's the worst day you're ever going to have in your life. That's important. So water purification, waste treatment, traffic management, communications for law enforcement, public safety, health, hospital call centers, the continuity of operations of hospitals, those things are important at the scale we live our lives. And that is infused into everybody that works in the company. Yes, our employee retention is greater than 90%. In fact, I think that number is low, but Joe's not here to correct me. In orientation, this is true. I make it very apparent that when you mature in your career, you're coming in entry level. I mean, not everybody comes in entry level, but for the most part, as you mature in your career, if you decide that you want to go chase Amazon's giant bags of cash, I will write you the letter of recommendation to help you get that job. Right? We are concerned about everyone's career as they define their career to be. Yeah, you got your foot in the door here with the analyst position, but there's a whole lot of moving parts to what we today call cyber. This is the big fuzzball of all this stuff. Well, to get good at any one part of it, you're going to have to get some experience in that part. How do you get that? Well, providing opportunities internally for advancement, go sideways, go be a consultant. That's what we do. And I will say, too, that the loyalty that we engender has caused 4 employees so far, Brian, to get the company logo tattooed on them. I'm one of them. I got shamed into it.
I was waiting for you to call me out on that one, Mike. It's in the works. This summer, I promise.
Okay.
I did want to touch on the mission.
Yeah, this is good because
Yeah,
no,
go,
that's a
go
good
ahead.
slide
Yeah,
to
go ahead,
talk to
Brian.
it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was what really got my foot in the door. Being prior service and hearing about the mission and what we're doing was, you never really lose that, sense of duty and responsibility for your community when you get out. I mean, most veterans can agree with that. And so, in hearing what the mission of this company was and how we're doing that, that provided me that safety blanket, if you will, emotionally, as I was getting out and transitioning into a career path that, I wanted to pursue. And so, for me here in Critical Insights mission, I mean, not only does everybody in this room have a vested interest in all of the things Mike was talking about, right? Lights coming on, toilets flushing, but it's our duty, right, as civilians to make sure that it's safe for everybody, right? All people that take advantage of these things. I guess that's all I had to say.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.
And
Well,
and
still,
then and
we
so
don't need to dwell on this, but here's a pictorial representation of what we think is important. And you will notice that local government does a whole lot of that stuff.
and Mike, I mean, one of the points you made in another talk we had about culture was, this isn't this we say these things, this isn't about us, right? We want all of your organizations to get better. We want, one of the reasons we're telling you this is not because, like, I mean, look, we're super proud of our company. At the same time, we want to empower, Mike, we want to empower other companies, other organizations, other municipalities to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, at the end of our little chat here, some ideas pop out that make it possible for you to maybe investigate doing some of these same things, you know, maybe at a different scale and in a different way. But still, I think the main things about the mission focus, avoiding burnout, making sure that there are opportunities for advancement and promotion and things like that. And we'll get to all that. So again, this is just, these are the things that are critical at the scale that we live our lives. And that phrase is very important. So go to the next slide, Jake. Okay. So how do we find our analysts, right? If we're going to be this company that's this focal point for the resources that are really hard for everybody else to get, how is it we have cracked that code? Well, this is how we have cracked that code. So Pisces, Public Infrastructure Security Cyber Education System. Basically, it is no cost monitoring for small cities, counties, ports, hospitals. And the reason it's no cost is because we collect metadata from those networks and use it as live fire curriculum for currently 14 universities, colleges across the country. So we are rolled out into several states. Some states we have universities teaching the curriculum, but we don't have any local government customers. Alabama, looking at you. And when we hire, we don't make those same mistakes about that job announcement that's nonsensical. And I mean, we really have this discussion about, look, I mean, we're interested in how curious you are. Tell me about your home network. Tell me about the experiments that you've done where you walked right up to the line of potentially doing something illegal. Those are the things that we want to talk about in these interviews. And when you're coming in as an analyst, right? Somebody who's going to be looking at network traffic primarily and then investigating strange things. You got to have a network background. And if you put together something at home and you have segmented your home network so that the wireless segment is different from the wired segment, and you've built a firewall, and hey, I went down to Goodwill and I bought a $5 Cisco access point and flashed it with the DDWRT firmware, turned it into a firewall, and now it rocks. You say stuff like that, that's going to get our attention a lot more than your bright, new, shiny degree in cyber. Okay, go to the next slide, Jake. So here's how Pisces works. So Pisces is our adjacent nonprofit. It's separate from the company. It's 501c3. Pisces handles a lot of legal documents. So we have statements of service that we execute between ourselves and the local governments, and a lot of organizations fall into that local government bucket, right? Maritime ports, for example, small ports. We have memorandum of understanding with universities. So when they teach, They teach the same curriculum that every other school is teaching, and it's all curated by Western Washington University, which is our lead school. When we say everybody teaches the same curriculum, what we do here on the back end, along with Western Washington University, is we send collectors out to these customers, these community data sharing partners. They hoover up all of the metadata, right? We can't read email, can't see a web page. It's source address, destination address, port, protocol, flags, timestamp, size, all that stuff. And intrusion detection sensor alerts. So we use Suricata as our IDS. And so what comes off the network? IDS alerts and NetFlow. And that goes to the Washington State Academic Cyber Range, where we have a duplicate stack, although a reduced functionality monitoring stack from our commercial stack. And that's how the students get access to data. And as they mine through the IDS alerts, they create tickets. Those tickets are evaluated by an oversight analyst, and we actually do put out some fires. So Pisces is really an organization that handles a whole lot of legal agreements. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
So I think there's an important part of Pisces here that I want to make sure comes through, which is, this, that when Mike was CISO of the city of Seattle, one of the problems was he needed people to monitor the network, and there wasn't an organization that would do it. Everyone was selling him tools, and Mike, you said before you just didn't have enough people to monitor all the tools. So the creation of Pisces came from that. It was, hey, we need students to understand how to be cyber analysts. Not everyone can go be a pen tester, which is what we always hear, right? Anytime we go to career talk, everyone's like, oh, how do I be a pen tester? And so Pisces creates analysts out of those folks, and then we hire the best of the best out of that program, which I think is really important, right, Lola?
Absolutely. I think the experience that the candidates get from being a part of the Pisces program is amazing. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of degrees out there that don't really teach you that real hands-on technical side. It's very theoretical. And so this allows a university student to be able to actually investigate a ticket, experience what it's like to leverage Wireshark for an investigation, understand the different tools that you can have for visualizations using open source tools. And so when they come in as a new hire, they have already kind of started learning the thought processes around what do I even think of when I start an investigation? What tools can I leverage? They also are more familiar with some of the specific tools that we use since we help support Pisces. I really think that it is just so amazing that we're able to put this in for the students and then be able to create those career opportunities that they're able to keep growing, and then also really use those specific skills that they had from that experience.
All right, Mike, what are the outcomes? So what are the outcomes we're looking for, not just for Pisces, but for everybody here?
Well, so I mean, first of all, this is about workforce development. I mean, at its core, we're talking about a lot of universities participating here. We are supported by the Department of Homeland Security, CESA. We're partnered with Pacific Northwest National Labs and all the 100-pound brains over there. But it's really a three-legged stool. It's, from my perspective, the thing that I am most interested in is the modicum of infrastructure protection that can be afforded to local governments, rural hospitals, things like this. That's the big piece for me. But it's the workforce development that's really taken center stage here. And why? Because we need to increase the bench strength of the United States of America, right? Yes, our company has benefited from being able to hire graduates coming out of these programs that have operational experience, with real-time data occurring, events occurring in critical infrastructure, right? That's a powerful thing to put on your resume. And I got to tell you, Pisces has been discovered, and Pisces students have been discovered. They're getting snapped up by the Boeings and the General Dynamics and, the Microsofts and Amazons of the world like crazy. And now that we're spread out across the country, that's exactly what we want to happen, right? We want our bench strength to come up, and we're going to litter the landscape with these folks. And then the third part, it's, infrastructure protection, workforce development, and then it's research. So we have, again, a partnership with Pacific Northwest National Lab, and they are working on things like new analytic detection techniques. So, for example, entropy in DNS A record lookups is a sign that malware may have just been detonated, things like that. So, infrastructure protection, workforce development, and research. That's what Pisces is about.
And yeah, and and I think this is a really important slide.
It is.
And I want to walk people through what they're looking at here. This is Bureau of Labor Statistics, and these are the top roles out in America right. And this is in America right now,
Fastest growing.
fastest growing in America, and one of them, even though it's at the bottom, one of them is information security analysts. Mike.
So again, when you go and you get your degree in cyber, there's a whole lot of superfluous stuff that you're just going to scratch the surface on, right? Governance, risk, and compliance, regulatory requirements, right? Red teaming, right? You're going to learn how to use Kali Linux. Can you break into a network? No, no, no. Get your certified ethical hacker certificate. No, you can't do anything. All right. But Pisces, we teach to a very specific role, and it's the one we need the most. Actually, we need wind turbine service technicians the most, but setting that aside, information security analyst is the 10th fastest growing job in the United States, and it's the only cyber job on the list. So we teach to that role very specifically, and that is the perfect entry level role. You come in knowing about how networks work, you know what bad stuff looks like, you're able to root out the bad stuff, run it to ground, find out the provenance of IP addresses, domain names, detonate malware in a sandbox, do all kinds of fun stuff. Those are the people we need. That's why we teach to that role very specifically. And just so I don't want to make it sound like it's all students doing all the work, because Pisces, the organization itself, provides oversight analysts in the different states where we are rolled out, so that students always have someone looking over their shoulder, kind of like a teacher's aide, but giving them feedback on their tickets, and then finding the ones that this is the real deal. This needs to be escalated. We've got to get a hold of this community partner and let them know that, for example, you have a compromised HVAC system, possibly in your data center, which is actually something that happened 3 weeks ago. So, it's we provide a bit of oversight to make sure that Pisces, the Happy Meal that's doing your network monitoring, is a little better than a Happy Meal.
And so,
Okay.
and Mike, as you talk about, the importance of promoting here, and and Lola and Brian, as we talk about the importance of promoting, we talk about this for our organization, but really what we're saying to, all of you IT directors and hospitals and manufacturing organizations and credit unions and municipalities, is, this is also what you need to do to keep your folks, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm. And Lola, I think, can talk to the whole promotion piece much better than myself. But there are tiers that you can move up as analysts, and I believe, Lola, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you come in as entry level, a resident analyst, you have 6 weeks to make your gates before you're promoted. And if you hit your gates in 1 week, you can just get promoted. Is that how it works?
Yeah, typically, it's between 3 to 6 weeks, just because you do have to submit certain requirements, and it does take you a little bit of time to get those requirements done. So 3 to 6 is the typical time it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now realize, though, that that's one path. I can just keep going up. In fact, our chief delivery officer started as an analyst, but there's all these other things going on in the company, right? We're a combination of managed and professional services that in aggregate represent every box you got to tick off in cyber, right? We'll do your 24/7 network monitoring. We'll break into your network. We'll do your risk assessment. We'll teach your employees to not trip over stuff out there. So um, let's move on to that. I will say, as we're talking about promotion, though, there's a total of one person in the company that's never been promoted. That's me. Okay, so here's how we do human capital development here at CI. And I wish Joe was here, our chief people person, because he can talk much better about this than myself. But we need folks to do customer communications and do business analytics and work hand in glove with customers as a security strategist to make sure that they have everything they need. If they ever need to ask a question, they always have a go-to. And and correcting me when Mike Sloan is harassing me, and things like that. Um, um, the mission focus, peer recognition, right? All the things that we do to retain. And I'll let Lola talk about the one thing that I think we do to retain that makes more difference than anything else when we get to it here in a minute. And it's one of the ways that we help to avoid burnout. And okay, now I'm getting called out by the CEO. All right.
Hey, so I mean, I think it's really important here to talk about again, Brian, you've talked to a lot of other companies here. One of the things that we hear from people is that in their organization, they don't feel like there's this ramp, and they don't know what their future is. And that's one of the reasons why they keep churning employees. I know I just talked to an organization that has their third IT director in 2 years.
What I have heard from, I'm not going to name any competitors, but I know lots of people who work for lots of places, and I've heard that in addition to paying exorbitant recruiting fees, that their retention time is about 18 months on average, which is, again, this is a hard job. It's here's a baseball bat, beat yourself over the head with this every day. So offering these other pathways to become a consultant and do risk assessments or do red teaming, right? In fact, I think our next slide actually shows everything that we've moved different folks into. There we go.
And,
Right.
and
So
yeah,
go ahead, Jake.
but before we hit this, Brian, I know you and I have talked about seeing other, not competitors, but seeing other organizations struggle with retaining employees.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the biggest things to talk about there is what Mike was alluding to, which is creating that pathway. And I talked a little bit about it earlier. You know, when an organization can look beyond the, typical cyber skills and see other skills that someone might, employ as part of their job, that can also bridge the gap in some opportunities. An example for me, a personal experience was while working, in the operations engineering department, building and deploying the collectors with customers, when they would go and have issues, I would have to do a lot of, face to face or, video chat calls with them. And someone in the company identified, oh, wow, Brian, you're really good at, communicating with our customers. Would you be interested in this sales engineering role? Right. And so creating those, neural pathways, if you will, within the company and identifying those other soft skills that people, have is crucial too, and creating those career paths.
Yeah, for sure. And then, Mike, I think you should talk through the green side of this, the top reasons professionals cited for leaving their jobs.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. They're getting poached. I mean, these practitioners are in such short supply that if you can't find them or develop them or have them recruited, you can poach them. And so, I mean, it's a nice way of saying recruited by other companies. They got poached, and there's a whole lot of that going on. In fact, again, I'll double down on this. Organized crime is recruiting people like crazy right now, and they pay exceptionally well, and the working conditions, I understand, are pretty good. Poor financial incentives, right? It's people know, this is out of the gate. You're going to make money in this job, analyst, and even if you stay an analyst and you just move up the ranks, eventually, you're working the Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit or something like that, and you're making gobs of money. So you got to pay them. There are other value propositions that you can make along with, salary. For example, in local government, it's you work 20 years and you get a pension for the rest of your life. Then you can go do another career. That's an actual incentive, especially for somebody that's come out of school and doesn't want to leave their town. Limited promotion and development again, right? So here we are overt about What is your direction? Where do you think you want to go? Yes, you just got your entry level job. You're an analyst now. There are all kinds of other things you can do in this ecosystem, some of which are for the company, some of which are customer facing. What's your direction? High work stress levels, yes, indeed, right? That really drives people away, and then lack of management support. When I say lack of management support, yeah, it's the checkbox versus the scapegoat. You're just here because we are required to have you here. We don't really need you, want you, or appreciate all the money we have to pay you, but you're here. Okay, well, that's not someplace anybody wants to work.
Yeah, and speaking of places people want to work, I did ask in the chat, audience members, does this resonate for you in your jobs? And two people say, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if others have stories they want to share in the chat. One question came in for Lola. Can you share how you help or manage a burned out employee who you want to retain?
Yes, I actually had experience with this very recently because this is real. This is not something I want to sugarcoat. This is something that we are all going to be dealing with as people managers in, the technology environment, specifically cybersecurity. What I really find valuable is, realizing that people are humans and that we're not just employees. And so, really having that value and kind of, reaching out to the individual and just seeing, hey, what's going on? Trying to see if maybe they're not taking their breaks. When I was talking with with this individual most recently, I had looked at the time off that they had taken, and they maybe had taken a week and a half in the past year, and not as a solid unit, just like a day here, a day here. And it was really starting to mess with their health, their well-being, and just feeling really burnt out from the role. So we were able to encourage them to take time off, take advantage of those benefits that we offer, so that way they could maintain the health for themselves and then be able to come in a healthy environment as well. So that's one component that we look at in terms of reducing burnout from our staff. And then I actually asked my analysts directly, what do you guys think the most that stops burnout for you here at CI? And when talking to them, they said, we dive through so much data. It's super serious. It can be very heavy. And they just really enjoy coming into work and having people that they can relate to, that they can laugh their experiences that they had gone through together, and then have learning opportunities. And they really, really like to just have that in type of environment. They say it motivates them, it makes them interested in working here. And so it kind of bridges the virtual workspace by having just like the right attitudes as well, because that really helps reflect on everyone that's a part of the team.
And Mike, you also talk about how we help people through remote work and their schedule.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the things, that bottom bullet point. I think that is a real deterrent to burnout, is 3 on 4 off. So people are working 12-hour shifts. They work 3 days and then they take 4 days off. And frankly, that's pretty humane. And you hear a lot of work. You hear about the 4-day work week, which is an initiative that's some places are trying. Well, we're down to the 3-day work week, so we're way ahead of that trend. I will say that way back in the before times, we had a disaster recovery strategy. And that was if there was an earthquake or an asteroid strike or whatever, that everybody was going to have to go home and work because the SOC would not be inhabitable. And then we had a pandemic and we said, okay, well, let's pull the trigger on that thing. And so everybody went home to work. And it turns out this is the perfect role for remote work. As long as we have assurances that the workspace has been secured because we are handling customer data. So you see the requirements there. Everybody has to be driven through, everybody has a managed device, but from that device, they go to a virtual workspace. And from there, they get to customer data. It's all logged. It is all strong access control at the network and authentication levels. Everybody uses multi-factor authentication. And our auditors looked at this and they said, yep, no problem. So here we are. Everybody's working at home. And if you combine that with the fact that the Pisces project is rolled out across the country, we now have a nationwide bench of potential analysts. What does camera on during shift mean? Much like I'm on camera right now, when people are on shift, they're like this all day. That's what it means. So again, we are managed detection and response, and we monitor ourselves just like we monitor every other customer. And our auditors were completely okay with the fact that we have documented controls. Those are implemented and occasionally audited in all the workspaces for our analysts. And we can now tap the nationwide bench of universities.
And hey, Lola, there's a good
Mhm.
question here in the chat for you as well, which is, here's somebody who is starting their own cybersecurity team from scratch. What are the top 5 things? You can fudge the number a little bit. What are the top things that they need to put in place because to sustain retention?
To sustain retention, I would really say value the connection with the employee first and foremost, because again, they're not there just to help grow your organization. You're there to assist them in their growth and their career journey, whatever that may be, whether that is continued with you through opportunities that you're able to provide or getting them set up to take that next step at a different organization. That really just makes them know that you care about them. And it actually reflects a lot with what we just talked about here, because when we did this remote policy change as a reaction to the COVID pandemic, this was not beyond just, hey, these are our values as an organization. You showed me that you actually cared about these values and about me, and that meant so much to me. And so that is really, really important. The other, as I've touched on a few times earlier, is really making sure that everyone is taking their time that they need to take breaks. If they're super busy because there's a ton of tickets coming in, just let them know, like, hey, it's okay for you to go take 5 minutes. Just try to take a little calm breath. We think about when we were in the office, right? You would go get a glass of water, go make a cup of coffee. And now sometimes you are like, oh, I'm gonna go grab a bio break. And so you're like, does that count as my break? And it's like, no, it doesn't. And so just really helping educate your team to know that, you know, we still want you to be able to do whatever you need. As long as your outcomes and expectations are met first and foremost, then we can support you from there. I think those are some 2 really good things. And I think I have a couple other things I can touch on further as we go through this slide.
And then there's another question that I'm going to get to in a second. But Mike, why don't this is important
Right.
for our customers, for business partners, and really for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, when you, and I'm sure lots of people have this experience, right? You're working with a vendor, a service provider, and every time you need to contact them, it's kind of starting over with the relationship. And as a really high touch organization, we really don't want to be put into that bucket. So it's really about this consistency of the people that you're going to interact with when you interact with CI. It's also the fact that we really do get the cream of the crop, from the Pisces educational partners. They call us and they say, here's somebody I really think you should look at. Somebody really nailed this. And, because let's face it, not everybody really gets it. When you sit down, you go, okay, here's the ticketing system. Here are the IDS alerts. Some people are in that class just because it's part of an overall program and they didn't know what they were getting into, and this is not their swim lane, but about 30% of them are really good. And so we get notified of those, and we will try and attract them over to CI basically by just telling them the things we were just telling you. It's important also that if you think about it, so here's we're bringing in the entry level analysts and we're developing them as analysts, and then they decide that there's another role they want in the company. We are happy to put them in that role, but that means that we have to then hire in entry level again. And as we keep doing that, that's how we control cost of goods in the SOC. A very important part of this is that because everyone has been through this experience, everyone has context and can jump in if we need surge capacity, right? I mean, Brian is sales engineer, security strategist. Brian can be an analyst. Our chief delivery officer can be an analyst. In fact, I think it's everybody in the company except me and Jake can basically be an analyst. And
Yeah, it's
here's
true. In another talk, Mike said, everyone can jump in. And I said, not me. Nobody wants marketing to jump in and be an analyst.
yeah. Well, I have no technical skills left either. So.
Yeah, I also want to touch on that. Not only does that help keep retention, but that really is a huge benefit to the company as well, because you have, through my experience at Critical Insight, I've been able to transition through 5 roles total. And every single time I've had the opportunity to learn these special nuggets that one by one start to reveal like this interconnected web between all departments, their expectations, our outcomes. And it also allowed me to learn empathy for other teams, and it increased my skill and knowledge to be able to keep my SOC staff basically in the loop, aware of different things that are affecting them. And, typically they don't have visibility to that. And so understanding the mission of the business is really critical for all organizations. And we should always encourage all of our employees to understand that and how it directly relates to work on an ongoing basis.
And Brian, the part I want to hit in the bottom here is our employees know we're firmly in their corner. You were a SOC analyst. What does that feel like as an employee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I do want to call out is not only the genuine connections that we have internally with all of our teams, but the genuine connections we make with our customers' IT teams. I mean, on the service delivery side as well, being the strategist, I interface with uh, network admins and security analysts, and having that experience of being an analyst, you can really do that apples to apples tech conversation with context, right? But also, you know, I've gotten to see organizations go from everything's on-prem to now they're starting to increase their security posture, and they're getting these new tools and technologies, and maybe their analyst got promoted to IT manager, and you really create those genuine human bonds where the technology and the silicon is really prevalent, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think these are all things that all companies can learn from. As we sort of get toward the end here, just a reminder that we do this for our organization so that we can serve critical infrastructure, so that we can serve other organizations, and so that when you're interacting with us as an organization, you're not always dealing with a new person. I talked to somebody who had a similar cybersecurity service, and every time they call in, they talk to somebody new, and their average and that company, I ended up talking to them. Their average tenure of an employee rather is 9 months. And that's crazy, right? I mean, think of all of the things that means. I think that's really important. I also want to remind folks you can sign up for all of our events on our website, and you can sign up for Mike's Daily Blast on the website, where Mike sends out articles every weekday that he's been doing, frankly, since the dawn of time. And it's a great thing to sign up for. I want to go back for a second here to something Lola said about, because in the chat here people are talking about empathy across departments and everything. Lola and Brian, are there other stories that you want to share that you think that the audience members can learn from, of things that we've either done right or things we've done wrong and that we've learned from? Lola, you want to go first?
Yes. Something that I have learned firsthand and have been coaching my team on, especially with communicating across departments, is just being very careful with your words and trying to be the person you want to be when you're discussing different topics. So, you're going to have some type of catalyst that's going to make you have a reaction. You're going to have your emotions. And for that, you're going to have stimulus, you have your emotion, and you have your reaction. For me, I try to have for myself and my team really check your emotions, so that way you are being the person you want to be when you're having maybe some of those difficult conversations, or maybe something that happened on the fly and you are trying to figure out what's going on. Also, by kind of using a more specific and meaningful type of constructive feedback or pathway to communicate. So, instead of saying, hey, you did this wrong, it's like, hey, I noticed that this happened. Can we have a quick talk about it? And then from there, you can get a little more specific, show impact, ask a question, but you never want to have some type of conversation where there's blame, making it uncomfortable for people to communicate with each other. So really just being positive in that type of manner. And I have resources for that I can throw some links out if anyone needs them. Jake can send me an email after the fact.
Yeah, and I do want to, say you can, Mike and I have all the time in the world to talk about this. So if you want to shoot either of us an email, to sit down and not just look, of course we'll talk to you about critical insight. We'll talk to you until we're blue in the face. We're very passionate about that. We're also happy to talk to you about your organizations and how you can improve in those. And Brian, were there, and I, because Lola said that I went to the slide, but Brian, were there stories that you wanted to tell as well?
Not really specific stories, but just my overall experience and having that mentorship. If there was one takeaway, would be to establish some sort of formal mentorship program within your organization, because being able to, have that resource, right, to attach yourself to, if you will, like, case in point, when I was in college, I said, I want to be a CISO in 10 years, right? Like that was my goal. And it's how
No,
can I
you
get
don't.
there? Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. All my dreams are just shot now. Well, one of the things that I appreciate about Critical Insight was being able to have that 20, 30 plus years of experience in the industry per mentor, right? And so really bouncing all my crazy questions off of. So have a mentorship program, because it really benefits employees who are trying to improve their career, right, and their resume value. And you'll find that even though it's great resume value, they'll more likely want to stick around. So
Yeah. And then Lola and Mike, I'm going to come to you with final thoughts here in a second. Before I do, I want to say to folks, if you haven't been to our webinars before, we do a couple of things in the end. Number one is we give out a survey. And the reason that we give out a survey is because we always want to know, hey, how was this? Could this have been better? Did you love this? Would you like more webinars like this? And so my colleague Jenny just put the link to SurveyMonkey in the chat there, and we'd love it if you take the survey. The other thing about taking the survey is you can either get a gift card, or we can donate that gift card to a charity that we work with that actually came from one of our customers and said, hey, you should really support this charity, which is the Society for Information Managers. They do a whole bunch of things in training people who are already in the IS space, and information management space to be better with cybersecurity and learn a lot. And so we'd really appreciate if you took a survey. The other thing is some folks we've found, are happy to email me and Mike to chat after this, and other people would rather just schedule time on a calendar because, hey, sometimes just scheduling on a calendar is easier. And so Jenny just put a calendar link in the chat there as well. Okay, let's do final thoughts. Lola, you first, then Mike.
All right. So I've been thinking about some of the things that we've talked about today. And I think the final thought I want to leave everyone with, which I haven't mentioned so far, is give your employees positive recognition. It is so easy to follow up with an employee and keep them accountable when they do things wrong, but very rarely do we actually tell them when they do well, or if they went above and beyond, or maybe they came in to do something extra. So really letting them know that you recognize that work, that it was additional, that they had, that they put that effort in. That really, really is something that really gets retention from your employees and just makes them know that you're paying attention and that you value them. So just one last piece of advice before I mute myself.
Perfect. Mike, final thoughts.
So I think it's important to actually talk about how you can take what you heard here and apply it. So just a few ideas here. Interns are going to become much more prevalent. And when you get an intern, or there are also apprenticeship programs that are supported by the federal government and others, the Apprenti program, the American Apprenticeship Initiative is another one. Get a hold of them, sell them on your mission, right? This is the cornerstone of everything. What you're doing is extremely important, and reinforce. Take an interest in their careers. If you are in, for example, local government, let them work out of class and let them try different things, right? Promote liberally. As Brian said, apply mentorship. Remote work is a real perk, and I know there's some hybridization going back to the office, but some of these roles are perfect for remote work. So take what we've talked about here and apply that back home and bring your own bench strength up.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that today you've learned how to improve your organization. We hope you've learned a little more about how we have improved this over time for us. And again, take that survey. The link is in the chat. And we hope that you have a great day and a great upcoming weekend. You're just a day and a half away.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Adios, everybody.